In 1977, something spoke on a frequency reserved by international law for nothing but the universe itself. Then it stopped. And the people listening for it, the ones who were supposed to keep listening, quietly stopped too. By the end of this, you'll know the number. You'll know the word written next to it. And you'll know exactly why nobody ever went looking for it again. This is not a recording of a voice. There was no voice. There was a number. 6 characters. Handwritten in red ink. In the margin of a printout nobody expected anyone to keep. Below it, one word. Wow. Not a name. Not a warning. Just astonishment. Circled once. On a morning in Ohio. By a man who did not know what he was looking at. Because 3 days had already passed since it happened. By the time anyone read the signal, it was gone. It has been gone for 49 years. Somewhere in the direction of a constellation called Sagittarius. For exactly 72 seconds. Something arrived on that forbidden frequency. Then it stopped. They looked again. And again. For decades. Nothing answered. This is the transmission log of what was heard. What was argued over. And what was quietly allowed to disappear. Not by anything out there. By us. In 1963, on a stretch of farmland near Delaware, Ohio, engineers finished building something that looked less like a telescope and more like a wound in the landscape. A flat metal reflector the length of 3 football fields, tilted toward the sky, feeding a curved wall of aluminum that funneled the whole sky into a single point. They called it Big Ear. It had spent its first decade doing patient, unglamorous work, cataloging radio sources, nearly 20,000 of them, most never seen before. Then, in 1973, Ohio State University handed it a different assignment. Listen for something that wasn't supposed to be there. The idea wasn't new. In 1959, 2 physicists named Giuseppe Cacconi and Philip Morrison proposed, in the pages of a scientific journal, that if anyone out there wanted to be found, they would broadcast near the frequency of neutral hydrogen, 1,420 megahertz, the most common element in the universe. The obvious channel. Anyone listening for company would tune there first. They were listening for a heartbeat and static. The work fell mostly to volunteers, retired engineers, graduate students, a part-time radio astronomer named Jerry Emin, who split his hours between the observatory and a faculty position in electrical engineering. Twice a week, stacks of green and white computer paper arrived. Printouts from an IBM 1130. Thousands of lines of numbers. Almost all of it noise. Someone had to read every page. By hand. For 4 years. The pages said nothing. On the night of August 15, 1977, Big Ear was doing what it always did. Sitting still, while the rotation of the Earth dragged the sky across its receivers. At 10:16 in the evening, local time, the telescope's fixed gaze crossed a patch of sky in the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. For 72 seconds. The exact length of time any single point in the sky stayed inside Big Ear's observing window. Something registered on one of its 50 channels. Not on the others. Just one. No one saw it happen. The observatory was unattended that night. The data simply accumulating on paper, the way it always did. 3 days passed. Before anyone looked. When Jerry Emin finally turned to that page in the stack, he was doing what he'd done 1,000 times before, scanning columns of ordinary noise, the occasional harmless spike. Then he found a vertical run of characters. That didn't belong. 6.E.Q.U.J.5. He picked up a red pen. He circled it. And in the margin, he wrote the only word that seemed to fit. Wow. That printout still exists. It sits today in the Ohio History Connection archives. The red ink faded a little more each year. The word is still legible. The signal is still unexplained. 3. The number. 6EQUJ5 wasn't a code. It was a measurement. Big ears, alphanumeric shorthand for signal intensity, running from 0 up through the letter U, which meant a reading 30 times stronger than the background hiss of empty space. Emin had spent years watching that column produce ones, twos, the occasional harmless 3. This run climbed to AU. It behaved exactly like something real. The frequency mattered as much as the strength. 2 separate calculations. One from the observatory's director, John Krauss. One from Emin himself, made years apart. Placed it within 50 kilohertz of 1420 megahertz. The hydrogen line. The exact channel Cocconi and Morrison had predicted 2 decades earlier. And the shape was almost too perfect. A telescope that cannot track, that simply waits for the Earth to turn a point of sky past it, will record any steady, distant source the same way every time. Rising for 36 seconds, peaking at the center, falling for 36 seconds. Wow, signal did precisely that. A clean, symmetrical curve. Exactly the shape Big Ear had been built to detect, from a fixed point far outside the solar system. Emin ruled out reflections from Earth almost immediately. The 1420 MHz band is protected by international agreement. Nothing terrestrial is supposed to transmit there. And nothing was found to be. What was left was a signal that looked, on paper, exactly like contact. So they went back and listened again. Emin himself pointed Big Ear at the same coordinates. In the weeks that followed, nothing. It never happened again. It wasn't for lack of trying. Over the following decades, other instruments took their turn. The Very Large Array in New Mexico, and much later, in a coordinated 2020 search, the Green Bank Telescope and the Allen Telescope Array, both aimed at a specific sun-like star, inside the signal's likely coordinates. Modern receivers, modern sensitivity, the same patch of sky. Every search came back the same way. Silence. A single detection, one instrument, one night. Never repeated, by anyone, ever, in 49 years of trying. For a civilization supposedly reaching out, that is a strange way to make contact. Once, and then, not again. Explanations arrived in waves. And each one, eventually, was quietly retired. Reflected satellite transmissions were considered and dismissed. The protected frequency again, and no satellite record that matched. Interstellar scintillation, a kind of cosmic flickering, was raised and found wanting. It doesn't produce a signal this clean. No explanation ever closed the file. In 2017, an astronomer named Antonio Paris proposed that 2 comets, 266P/Christensen and P/2008Y2, had drifted through the right patch of sky that August, and that their hydrogen envelopes might have produced the signal. It made headlines. It did not survive scrutiny. Cometary hydrogen clouds are diffuse and slow-moving. They don't produce a sharp, narrowband spike, and they don't vanish completely on a second pass, the way this one did. Seth Shostak of the SETI Institute was among those who said, plainly, that the comet explanation didn't hold up. Years later, a research team led by Abel Mendez at the University of Puerto Rico raised a different possibility. That rare, tightly aligned clouds of cold hydrogen gas, lit from behind by a flare, from an object like a magnetar, might occasionally produce something resembling the WOW signals profile. It's a real phenomenon, observed in weaker form in other data. It means the universe might have, accidentally, created a cosmic laser, aimed directly at us, for 72 seconds. Whether that explains this specific night remains an open question, still argued over, still unsolved. Every hypothesis so far has explained a little. None has explained all of it. The file was never closed. It was simply set down. What makes this different from an unsolved mystery? is what happened to the will to solve it. In 1992, NASA finally launched a dedicated, well-funded search for exactly this kind of signal. A full-sky, high-resolution survey built by people who had spent careers waiting for a moment like August 15, 1977, to happen again, this time with instruments good enough to prove it. It lasted about a year. In 1993, the United States Congress eliminated its funding entirely, calling it wasteful, folding it into a broader round of budget cuts. The search for what the wow signal might have been, the serious, government-funded version of that search, ended before it had produced a second season of data. What continued afterward continued on scraps, private funding, volunteer time, borrowed hours, on telescopes built for other purposes. The question never went away. The institutional will to chase it at scale did, and then the place itself was taken. Big Ear had always stood on leased land, owned by a developer, tied up in an agreement that outlived the telescope's usefulness to almost no one but the volunteers still running it. In 1998, that lease ended. The land was sold. Big Ear, the largest, longest-running SETI instrument in history, the only one that ever produced 6 EQJ5, was dismantled and hauled away. The place where it happened is a water hazard now. In its place, an 18-hole expansion of a golf course and several hundred new houses. The exact coordinates where the signal was received are now, by most accounts, somewhere under a golf course pond off U.S. Route 23, a few miles outside Delaware, Ohio. No plaque marks the precise spot. There is a historical marker nearby, at Perkins Observatory, but the instrument itself, the one physical thing on Earth built to hear it again, no longer exists. Smaller searches continue. Other telescopes, other nights, other coordinates. None of them are Big Ear. None of them are aimed continuously at the one patch of sky that once, for 72 seconds, said something back. The printout still exists in an archive in Ohio. The ink is fading. The word is still legible. We never learned what it said. We only learned how quickly we could stop trying to find out. This is transmission 6 EQJ5. Still unanswered. Still listening. Signing off.